reborn on the very night Liang Xien and Lingy planned their elopement. As his fiancé, I gave him travel money, carrying my gratitude in his heart. He and she slipped out of the city under cover of night. What awaited them thereafter was a life of roughing it, sleeping under the stars, and utter destitution. He would never again have the chance to wield power over the world as he had in his previous life. The first thing I did after rebirth was gather some travel money. Under cover of night, I went to the bamboo grove west of the city and placed it in Liang Xien's hands. He showed his gratitude. Liang Xien and Lingy eloped. Watching their hurried retreat, I felt as though I saw the hardships of their future lives. The legitimate son of a distinguished family had willingly abandoned his status, forsaking privilege and glory for a wandering physician. The news spread like wildfire, becoming the capital's laughingstock. Childhood sweethearts no match for a heavenly beauty, it became the talk of tea houses and taverns. And I was that pitiful, abandoned fiancé everyone spoke of. I shed tears on the spot, cementing the rumors. When his father came to my door, his face was utterly dejected. This affair had stripped him of honor. "We have wronged you," he said, with eyes brimming with grievance. I murmured, "It was fate that kept us apart. I hold no blame." Then, with measured grace, I turned and left. Alone, I let a faint smile touch my lips. This lifetime, I would grant him his freedom. The story of his bond with Lingy, however, was a tale of its own. While traveling through the southern frontier, he was struck by snake venom and saved by Lingy. Disguised as a disgraced young noble exiled from his family, he claimed to be unmarried. Naturally, over time, he and Lingy grew fond of each other. Yet he never mentioned his long-betrothed fiancée. Pressured by his family to marry, he instead brought Lingy back with him. He insisted on marrying her, determined to give her proper status. The Liang family refused to accept a lowly wandering physician as a daughter-in-law. He resorted to a hunger strike, but it proved futile. As our wedding date drew near, he conceived the plan to elope. He was willing to abandon everything he possessed to wander the world with her. In my past life, upon learning of this, I followed the Liang family's instructions. When he came to return the token of our betrothal, I took advantage of the moment, got him drunk, and brought him back to the Liang residence. Lingy arrived at the bamboo grove, mistakenly believing he had broken his promise. She departed in bitter resentment, never to be seen again. From that day onward, he drowned his sorrows in wine daily, losing the refined, noble demeanor of a young master from a distinguished family. I was so close to spending my life with her. His heart turned to ashes, and he complied with his family's wishes to marry me. After the wedding, his sole focus was on his official career, accepting every bit of support I and my family offered him. But when he reached the pinnacle of power, he sent men to search every city, crossed the seas to the east, and journeyed far beyond the mountain passes, all to find her whereabouts. It was then that he revealed his true nature. My years of scheming were solely to ascend to high office. To find her and bring her back, nothing could stand in my way. For 7 long years, his obsession never faded, it became a demon within his heart. He imprisoned me in the rear courtyard, feeding me a bowl of medicinal broth each day. Watching my wretched state, he wiped his hands with a handkerchief and said casually, "Fu Qining, when Lingy returns, you'll have just made room for her." Lingy saw me lying on the bed, barely clinging to life. Contempt flashed in her eyes as she tilted her head slightly. "All your efforts for nothing. Do you regret it?" In their earth-shattering love story, I was merely the insignificant first wife. She shouldn't have asked if I regretted it. She should have asked if I resented it, resented this life where fate was not my own. When the Chancellor was entrusted with the young emperor by the late emperor in his final hour, he gained unparalleled power. After his first wife's early death, he searched the land and reunited with his youthful love, becoming a celebrated tale. And I was the stumbling block, ruthlessly cast aside. Heaven granted me a second chance. This time, I could choose for myself. In my past life, I erred. I should never have prevented him from embracing that lowly destiny. This time, I choose to honor their love, to respect their fate. Henceforth, enduring wind and frost, traversing snow-laden paths, these two shall become chapters in their love story. Without his family's protection and support, Liang Xien was but an ordinary man. The provisions I gave him, based on his usual spending habits, would barely last half a month. From childhood, he'd lived in luxury, clothed in brocades worth 1,000 gold per bolt, sipping only the most prized Westlake Longjing tea. To avoid drawing attention, he'd taken few possessions from home. Soon, Liang Xien would learn the harsh realities of scrimping and saving, of empty pockets. He once told me, "This illustrious lineage and vast fortune mean nothing to me. They cannot compare to the time I spent with Lingy in that small town in the southern frontier." He lived there for only 3 short months. 3 months of ordinary life felt like a novel. Different experience to him. But 3 years, or 30 years, of worrying about money? He might not be able to endure that. The Liang family sent no one to search for him. He and Zhao Lingy traveled together, eventually settling in Lanqing. To make ends meet, Zhao Lingy went out daily to treat patients. Once, she had held herself with a certain aloof pride, refusing to treat the wealthy. But now, with expenses mounting, she had to set aside her pride. As long as the payment was generous enough, she would accept the case. Liang Xien, too, possessed a certain pride. He could never bring himself to rely on Zhao Lingy for support. Back in the capital, his brushwork had always drawn praise, revered as transcendent art. Yet this proud scion of a distinguished family had resorted to selling his calligraphy and paintings to make ends meet. Now, in the marketplace, his works were scrutinized and criticized without restraint. Once, people would pay a fortune for a single piece of his calligraphy. Now, commoners on the streets declared his paintings weren't even worth 20 coins. Perhaps in this moment, he too pondered what remained for him after leaving the Liang family. On Zhao Lingy's birthday, their first argument erupted. It began when Zhao Lingy examined a wealthy merchant's son and won his favor. For her birthday, that young merchant sent countless brocades and treasures, even lighting fireworks for 2 hours straight atop Lan City's grandest restaurant. The entire city witnessed this magnificent spectacle. Truthfully, this scene had played out in her past life too, though it occurred after Zhao Lingy had left the capital alone. That wealthy young master had stayed by her side, easing her melancholy and taking her to explore mountains and rivers. But now that she had successfully eloped with Liang Xien, the wealthy young master had appeared a little earlier than expected. As she watched the fireworks, a dazzling smile spread across her face. This very moment was captured by Liang Xien, who had rushed over. He confronted Zhao Lingy. "You once claimed not to care about my status, whether I was a nobleman's son or a common peddler. You vowed your heart would never waver. Yet now, after so little time, you despise my poverty and inability to offer you a life of luxury, seeking to climb higher branches instead?" With that, he hurled the porcelain doll in his hand to the ground, shattering it, and turned to leave. Zhao Lingy rushed after him, and a heated argument erupted in the small courtyard. No matter how Zhao Lingy explained, he refused to believe there was no connection between her and that wealthy young master. He had used money from selling calligraphy and paintings to buy her a porcelain doll as a birthday gift. Yet, in the face of silk robes, jewels, and fireworks filling the sky, it seemed so meager and laughable, wounding his pride. Her accusatory tone made his heart grow even colder. She blamed him for leaving early and returning late every day, no longer patiently accompanying her as before. When she encountered difficult patients during consultations, she had no one to confide in about her heartache. Yet Liang Xien coldly retorted, "If not for you, how could I have fallen to such depths?" When the news reached me, I burned the letter to ashes after reading it. This letter had come from the Liang household. I knew of Liang Xian's movements before they did. I hosted a small banquet under the moon, surrounded by my closest female friends. The Gu family's daughter, indignant on my behalf, sighed deeply. The Liang family's son abandoned his clan and forsake his status for a mere physician's daughter. He will surely regret it someday. This turn of events has helped you see his true nature. Recognizing he was no good man and letting go early is a blessing in disguise. I nodded in agreement and clinked glasses with her. Truthfully, after he eloped with Lingy, the Liang family intended to send guards to bring him back. It was my persuasion that dissuaded his parents from pursuing him. The more others tried to stop him, the more he sought to prove his love was stronger than gold. Defiant against convention. Better to let him go. Affection is as fleeting as mist, dissipating when the passion fades. The Liang parents heeded my words and let him live his own life. Now that they've sent this letter to me, it proves I was right. Now, with no one to stand in their way, the two have become a couple bound by resentment. The Liang family is likely already waiting for Liang Xien to return like a prodigal son, kneeling to beg forgiveness. Mrs. Liang herself came to my door, clasping my hand and pleading, "If he ever repents and returns, perhaps you too could rekindle your bond." Facing her earnest gaze, I smiled without reply. What I want is for him never to return. The status of a family's legitimate heir, from the day he abandoned it. I never intended to let him reclaim it so easily. I set up a soup kitchen in the eastern part of the city, distributing porridge daily. Passers-by all spoke of my kind heart. Upon learning I'd been abandoned by my fiancé, they felt deeply for me. The scandal of the Liang family's heir eloping with another ran rampant. But my soup kitchen served another purpose. The moment I saw the birthmark on that filthy beggar child's arm, I knew the person I sought had appeared. Her name was Luo Jinyan. She crawled at my feet, tugging at my clothes, begging me to save her mother. I paid dearly for a physician to treat her mother's illness and even purchased a small courtyard for them, settling the mother and daughter there. Her mother's condition improved, allowing her to earn a living through embroidery and laundry instead of begging. As for the debts incurred from medical treatment, I settled them all. She called me a rare kind soul in this world. She was mistaken. I only aid those who hold value to me. Perhaps she still doesn't realize she never should have lived this life. Liang Xien occupied the position meant for her. Back then, the Liang family's concubines bore sons one after another, while the legitimate wife remained barren for years. When she finally conceived, she gave birth to a daughter. To make matters worse, she damaged her body during childbirth, making future pregnancies unlikely. She gambled everything on one last chance. She swapped her own daughter for the son of a commoner. All these years, Liang Xien, as the Liang family's sole legitimate son, has basked in luxury and privilege. Yet he remains unaware that all this was stolen from another's life. It was the swapped-out daughter who should have been raised in gold and jade. Liang Xien is a complete counterfeit, a cuckoo in the nest. In his past life, he uncovered the truth during an investigation, yet chose to bury it. That woman, Luo Jinyan, died by the sword of an assassin sent by Liang Xien. When Lady Liang learned of this, she chose to cover it up for him, utterly indifferent to her own daughter's life. This time, I will help her drive Liang Xien out of the Liang family once and for all. Liang Xien returned sooner than I anticipated. His first act upon his return was to seek me out. He sent a letter delivered by his men. Outside, a torrential downpour raged. Yet he stood stubbornly beneath the eaves, refusing to move. When I stepped out with my umbrella to meet him, his robes were already drenched by the rain. Gone were the brocaded robes of old. Today he wore only a plain-colored long robe, devoid of any adornments. Why did you give me that travel money back then? His voice was low as he spoke these words slowly, seemingly waiting for me to speak first, to offer him a way out. I let out a soft laugh. I'd rather see how far you and she can go without my interference. I'm quite looking forward to the outcome. Hearing this, his eyes darkened, unwilling to dwell on the subject. In my past life, he searched the world for her, showered her with unparalleled favor, even poisoning me with his own hands to clear her path. I believed that love could withstand the world's storms, doubts, and suspicions. I never imagined it would crumble so swiftly. His obsession was nothing more than the Lingy he'd longed for in his memories. Once obtained, it proved utterly worthless. I know why he returned to the capital. He witnessed Lingy weeping on the shoulder of that wealthy young master. The outcome proved me wrong. He spoke, his voice low and heavy. "Qi, would you still give me a chance?" He tentatively voiced the question. I replied slowly, "You shouldn't have asked that. When you brought Lingy back, you stripped me of my dignity. You eloped with her, leaving me open to the world's scorn. Now that she's broken your heart, you turn to me? Am I so lowly? Merely your second choice?" Panic flickered in his eyes. After a long moment, he stammered, "I know I shouldn't expect you to return so easily. I'll do whatever it takes to satisfy you." He turned and left in the pouring rain. In the days that followed, he came to my door repeatedly. Everyone said he'd reformed, but I refused to see him, feigning illness to send him away. Yet his next action was astonishing. Beneath Xiangshan Temple, he climbed the 9,900 steps, kneeling at every step to pray for my well-being. Persevering until he reached the summit, he knelt before the Buddha for 3 days, beseeching for my recovery and lasting health. Before the Buddha's shrine, he made a vow to bind our lives together in marriage, to grow old side by side. Mother told me he was a clever man, building the very steps leading to me with his own hands. He knew I feigned illness to avoid him, and he knew I cherished the dignity I'd once lost. So, with this act, he restored my honor. But I went to see Luo Jinyan. Some things could no longer be delayed. Luo Jinyan has always been deeply grateful to me, showing utmost humility whenever we meet. Yet she was meant to be the legitimate daughter of the Liang family, destined for a life of silk robes and fine food, not to be cast out into the streets, forced to worry about survival. I took her hand and gazed at the crescent-shaped birthmark on her arm. She boarded the carriage with me. When it halted outside the Liang residence, we watched from afar as Lady Liang emerged, her carriage resplendent, surrounded by a swarm of maidservants. The words that followed would forever alter her destiny. "Do you know where this is?" She looked at me in confusion, smiling softly. The Liang family is a prosperous and distinguished lineage, enduring for generations. I've heard of their ancestors holding 7 marquisates, but someone of my lowly status would never dare approach such a place. "This is your home." She chuckled lightly, thinking I was joking. "That elegantly dressed lady you saw earlier is the matriarch of the Liang family, your birth mother. The crescent-shaped birthmark on your arm is proof. The current legitimate heir, Liang Xien, occupies the position meant for you. You were switched at birth. You can verify all this with your present mother." She froze in place, needing time to process such news. I escorted her back to the alley. When she stepped down from the carriage, she seemed dazed, standing outside the house for a long while without entering. Her mind was sharp, yet the closer she got to the truth, the more timid she became. After I returned to the mansion, the Liang family sent many more gifts. I instructed the maids to catalog and store them in the warehouse, all to be returned in due time. After descending from Xiangshan Temple, He placed a talisman of safety in my hand, claiming he had personally sought it out. He knew full well I'd merely made an excuse. Yet he didn't expose me. Instead, he used this as an opportunity to play the role of the prodigal son returning to the fold. Mother, aware of my distaste for him, began arranging meetings with other suitors. Today it was the young general. Tomorrow the son of the Minister of Works. Private banquets at home followed one after another, creating quite a bustle. Mother said the Fu family was also a distinguished lineage, no less prestigious than the Liangs. They had produced multiple imperial tutors and chief ministers, a noble house whose disciples spanned the land. Their daughters need not suffer his indignities. Yet at the Lady of Changyuan's flower viewing banquet, he sidestepped the crowd, cornered me against a wall, gripped my shoulders, and demanded, "Fu Qining, haven't I done enough? I've even trampled my pride to offer you an exit. Yet you stubbornly refuse to lower your stance. What more do you want from me?" Watching his unhinged state, his self-control now a mere fraction of what it was in my past life, I realized he couldn't sustain this charade for even a few days. I wrenched free from his grip, flinging his hand away, and replied slowly, "Just because you offered an exit, must I take it? When I broke off our engagement and brought Lingy back, weren't you nearly dying of grief? Didn't you give me that travel money just to make me feel a shred of pity for you? Now that I've returned, don't push your game of playing hard to get too far. To me, a reformed rogue holds no value." I slowed my speech, letting each word fall deliberately. His gaze faltered, his raised hand froze in midair. He couldn't fathom how my devotion to him could vanish overnight. After a long silence, he maintained his stance and issued a threat. Few families dared to defy the Liang clan. His unspoken meaning was crystal clear to me. As long as he refused to budge, other families wouldn't risk offending the Liang clan to form an alliance with the Fu family. He intended to wear me down. Families that had previously shown interest in a Fu family alliance gradually distanced themselves. I knew he was the one orchestrating it behind the scenes. His desire to salvage this marriage stemmed solely from the immense profit it promised him. With the Liang and Fu families united, they would propel him to the highest echelons of power. To achieve this, he stooped to groveling and humbling himself to beg my return. Yet when I coldly refused, he resorted to threats, truly his style. Just as he gloated over the Liang family's unparalleled influence, the third prince petitioned the emperor for a royal match, publicly requesting my hand before the throne. His Majesty immediately granted the marriage between me and the third prince. I accepted the imperial decree with remarkable calm. A royal match cannot be refused, and I never intended to. Mother, however, led me indoors and spoke at length. True affection is rare among imperial spouses. Your path ahead may prove arduous. What could be more arduous than my past life? Gripping her hand, I replied softly, "Mother, I do not seek true affection. Human hearts shift. True feelings fade. What use would his affection be to me? The destinies of all under heaven are ever at the mercy of the highest ruler. In this life, if I must strive, I shall strive for the highest position." With the wedding date set, I had never laid eyes on the third prince before. Even in my past life, he remained stationed at the frontier, unseen. On our wedding night, he lifted my veil and met my gaze. His lips curved in a smile, yet his eyes studied me. An aura of sternness radiated from him as he openly stated his reasons for marrying me. Because of my family background, the Fu clan's disciples spread far and wide, wielding significant influence among scholars and commanding widespread respect. He made no secret of his ambition either. He declared that husband and wife were one, and his sights were set on the throne. He solemnly promised that when he ascended to high office, he would grant me supreme honor and make me the empress who guided the realm. I smiled faintly, handing him the cup of wedding wine. "Your Highness will surely achieve your ambitions," I said. "My maternal family and I will spare no effort to pave the way for you." These words felt eerily familiar. In my past life, when Liang Xien needed my family's support, he too had spoken softly, making empty promises. But empty promises were easy to make. He could do it, so could I. Helping others seize power in my past life had been exhausting. How much more satisfying would it be to have others seize power for me? In this life, who would use whom remained to be seen? During my 3-day post-wedding visit to my maternal home, the third prince personally accompanied me. He spared no effort in showing me the respect and dignity I deserved. My mother asked privately, "How does the third prince treat you?" I replied only, "With mutual respect." On the journey back, he mentioned foreign tribes were troubling the border, and His Majesty might order him to lead troops to suppress them. I stopped him. He must not go on this mission. He couldn't understand why I insisted on stopping him, thinking I was just being unreasonable. If Your Highness insists on going, then when the day comes for us to compete, the Fu family will stand aside. He seemed annoyed, but after weighing his options, he began feigning illness upon returning to the mansion. In the end, His Majesty dispatched General Huaiqing. We had assumed it was merely a barbarian uprising, requiring only a swift suppression. Yet no one could have foreseen that General Huaiqing would perish there. The barbarians were skilled in poisonous arts, their strange ailments defying cure. When the news reached the third prince, he broke out in a cold sweat in his residence. He pulled me into his arms, sighing repeatedly that I was his lucky star. With me by his side, he would surely turn misfortune into fortune and find blessings in adversity. From that day onward, he grew ever more trusting and reliant upon me. Zhao Lingy had returned to seek out Liang Xien, hoping to clear up the misunderstanding. Yet Liang Xien had witnessed Zhao Lingy weeping on the shoulder of that wealthy young master, and his heart seemed to have grown cold. This time, without waiting for his parents to intervene, he personally ordered Zhao Lingy to be driven away. When I encountered the two again, it was amidst a scene of them pulling and tugging at each other in the tavern. Zhao Lingy clutched his sleeve, pleading desperately for him to hear her explanation. His face showed only impatience, yet flashes of his deep devotion to her in my past life flashed through my mind. The contrast made his current coldness seem almost laughable. Finally, Zhao Lingy blurted out the shocking truth, "I am carrying your child." 3 months along. Calculating the timing, he had indeed still been in launching at that point. When Liang Xien saw me, a flicker of embarrassment crossed his eyes. He ordered his men to pull Zhao Lingy away. I couldn't be bothered with their entanglement anymore. Just as I was about to turn and leave, he lowered his voice and said, "Seeing us come to mutual loathing must bring you satisfaction, I suppose." I raised an eyebrow slightly and replied, "Yes. Betrayers always get their comeuppance. Naturally. It's satisfying." "You." My words left him speechless. He seethed with anger, yet he knew he was in the wrong and had no retort. Liang Xien brought Zhao Lingy into the mansion. This time, he didn't insist on making her his legitimate wife. If she were merely a concubine, the Liang family might choose to turn a blind eye. At the matriarch's birthday banquet, a woman appeared bearing a token of identity, accompanied by her foster mother. She declared herself the Liang family's legitimate child, swapped at birth by malicious intent, and demanded a blood test to prove kinship. The eldest madam's face paled, her gaze darting nervously. The matriarch had long harbored resentment toward her, and the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law had privately clashed for years. And now, at such an important occasion as the birthday banquet, such a scandal had erupted, bringing utter disgrace upon her. The second wife of the Liang family, relishing the spectacle, poured fuel on the fire, insisting that the legitimate bloodline determined family inheritance and that there could be no confusion of lineage. The matter must be thoroughly investigated. Luo Jinyan bore an uncanny resemblance to Magistrate Liang. From the moment everyone clearly saw her features, Murmurs spread incessantly. Even Magistrate Liang himself seemed hesitant. The third prince and I remained seated in the guest area, sipping tea. Without getting involved in the commotion, we excused ourselves at the appropriate moment. As we were about to mount the carriage, the third prince remarked with evident amusement, "Qinning truly is destined for nobility. Had the marriage to the Liang family gone through, you'd be the one in this predicament now." Yet that Liang Xien lad set his sights on a wandering physician, and now it seems they're a perfect match. The third prince was clearly in high spirits. Overnight, the news spread throughout the capital. The matriarch of the Liang family personally admitted that years ago, in her quest for a male heir, she had swapped her biological daughter with the son of a commoner. Thus, the true heiress was cast into the world, enduring hardship and suffering, while the impostor lived a life of luxury and privilege for half a lifetime. The Liang matriarch was sent to an ancient temple to live as a nun, shaving her head and dedicating herself to contemplation for the rest of her days, never to return. Divorce was exceedingly difficult for a prominent family, entangled as they were in intricate marital ties. This was the most dignified outcome she could hope for. Liang Xien was also expelled from the Liang household. The matriarch and the family head had initially felt reluctant, but his position within the Liang family had become too awkward. Holding the title of legitimate son, he was simply intolerable to the others. The day he stepped out of the Liang residence, Luo Jinyan was welcomed back into the family, restored to her rightful place. A life out of place, now returning to its proper position. In her previous life, Luo Jinyan remained ignorant of her true origins until her death, never knowing why she had been targeted for murder. His Majesty was advancing in years, and the ambitions of the third prince were gradually coming to light. He treated me ever more kindly. When I gazed at my reflection, he stood behind me, took the comb from my hand, and personally brushed my long hair. Now that His Majesty intends to designate an heir, I hope my father-in-law can lend me his support in court. Upon hearing this, I understood his meaning. Your Highness may rest assured, your wish shall be fulfilled in due time. With such a promise from me, he was naturally overjoyed. Over the years, he had gained some prestige in the military, but among the civil officials, his reputation was far from stellar. To ascend to the position of crown prince, he must first gain the approval of the civil officials. He received the answer he desired. This was exactly how Liang Xien had behaved when he sought smooth advancement in his career. Having seen it all before, I knew precisely what he desired and what he wished to hear. Soon, the political winds shifted abruptly within the court, with all efforts focused on promoting the third prince as crown prince. Even those who had once looked down on him now praised his distinguished military achievements and noble character. With His Majesty's eldest son having died young and the second son lost to debauchery, the third prince was indeed the best choice. Amidst this wave of support, the third prince ascended to the position of crown prince. On the day of his investiture, I stood beside him, dressed in splendid court attire. He held my hand, smiling with hidden meaning. "The road ahead is perilous," he said. "You must walk it with me." Meeting his gaze, I smiled softly, of course. That day, we entered the Eastern Palace together. Everyone said I was blessed. The crown prince cherished me deeply, and when they recalled Liang Xian's broken promise and broken engagement, they treated it as nothing more than a laughing matter. Soon, I became pregnant. The crown prince was overjoyed, expressing his hope that I would bear him a son. If this child were a boy, he would become the emperor's eldest grandson, a status holding special significance in his eyes. I smiled and replied, "That depends on whether heaven grants its favor." Yet he hurried away, heading to Jing'an Temple to pray for blessings, beseeching the heavens to ensure this child was male. He went off to attend to his own affairs, while I desired a daughter. A daughter inheriting everything from me, that was what I wished to see. If I bore the emperor's eldest grandson, it would certainly strengthen his position as heir. I understood the deep-seated unease in his heart. After all, the current emperor favored his youngest son, cherishing the ninth prince above all others. In my past life, it was this ninth prince who ascended the throne. Before his death, His Majesty entrusted the young prince to Liang Xien and other ministers, commanding them to assist him wholeheartedly. Yet the third prince never even lived to become crown prince, he perished in that foreign rebellion. But I want a daughter. The daughter they look down upon is the treasure in my heart. I heard that after Liang Xien was cast out of the Liang family, he lived a life of hardship and misery. Life was harsh, and constant arguments between the two led to him accidentally pushing Lingy. She lost the child. Her heart grew cold, and she vanished without a trace. From that day onward, their fate had nothing to do with me. Life and death, fortune and misfortune, poverty and wealth, all were their own destiny. My sights were set on the highest pinnacle. Ever since I became pregnant, some have advised me to select more beauties for the crown prince. I once mentioned this to him, but he flatly refused. He said, "You endure hardship in your pregnancy. As your husband, I cannot share your burden, so I should spend more time with you. There is no need to choose more beauties, I have no need for their service." His words deeply moved the palace maids around me. Regardless of royal custom, even in ordinary wealthy households, a pregnant mistress would typically have concubines prepared. His declaration made him seem like a rare gem of a husband in this world. Though occupying a position of honor, he showed genuine consideration for his wife. The maids cast envious glances his way, immediately showering him with flattery about his good fortune. My gaze sharpened slightly as I looked at the crown prince thoughtfully, then smiled softly. "Indeed, to have met such a good man as your highness is truly my blessing." Such words pleased him greatly, and he played the role of the attentive, considerate husband even more convincingly before everyone. The noble ladies of the capital still whispered among themselves, saying that marrying a man like the crown prince would make one's life worthwhile. Hearing these words, I merely shook my head and smiled. To believe in the affection of royalty would be the height of foolishness. Thus, when I stumbled upon him meeting secretly with Liang Xien during the mid-autumn banquet, not a ripple stirred in my heart. Hidden behind the rockery, I watched with detached calm as he embraced Liang Xien. Their hearts laid bare. His voice was soft and soothing as he reassured her, "Our great cause remains unfinished. I still need her and her family's backing. The better I treat her, the more wholeheartedly her family will support me. When the time comes, I will give you your rightful place. You will stand by my side openly and with honor." Liang Xien nestled against his chest, her voice trembling with a hint of choking sobs. "But what if the crown princess refuses?" The crown prince's tone turned icy. "Then she will have no choice in the matter." I had watched the grand spectacle unfold. Only after the two of them had departed did I slowly emerge from behind the rockery. When the birds are gone, the fine bough is put away, so it has always been since ancient times. Only who would be the bird and who the bough remained to be seen. The crown prince always carried himself with excessive arrogance. Upon returning to the eastern palace, I found him frantically searching for me. That look of concern, truly flawless. I frowned slightly. Where had His Highness picked up this lotus fragrance? It smelled like a woman's powder. A flicker of panic crossed his brow before he swiftly concealed it. He must have passed by the hibiscus garden in the Imperial Park earlier. Hence the scent. I smiled, choosing not to press further. After 10 months of pregnancy, the time of delivery arrived. He paced restlessly outside the room, muttering, "Heaven grant it be a boy." Yet the pain sharpened my awareness, making me remember every word he spoke. In the end, a daughter was born, just as I had wished. But his face betrayed such profound disappointment. He held her only briefly before hastily handing her to the wet nurse. He told me to rest well, promising to visit later. The maid beside me seemed to notice his attitude too, her lips twitching as if she wanted to speak but held back. The old wet nurses gossiped privately, daughters are worthless, they'll never be as precious as sons. When a secondary consort arrives and gives birth to a son first, she'll rise in status through her child. Then, the crown princess might just find herself in tears. I happened to witness it and ordered 20 lashes for each of them. Watching their anguished cries, I remarked indifferently, "My daughter will be of incalculable worth." From that day on, no one in the Eastern Palace dared speak of it again. The old emperor fell gravely ill, and with the crown prince overseeing the realm, the burden upon his shoulders grew heavier. Those with ulterior motives sought to stir up trouble during this time. On New Year's Eve, the old emperor did not appear. All the festive celebrations were presided over by the crown prince. He was consumed by countless trivial matters, returning each time utterly exhausted. Yet at such a moment, I felt it was my duty to remind him, "Your Highness, your brothers are stirring. Why not set a trap? Catch them like turtles in a jar." As my words fell, he seemed to snap awake. The court was indeed in turmoil. Yet many of these troubles were deliberately stirred up by his brothers. Their aim was to overwhelm him with exhausting responsibilities, leaving him vulnerable while they plotted their uprising. 10 days later, the palace urgently summoned imperial physicians to keep vigil at His Majesty's bedside through the night. This undoubtedly signaled to the outside world the emperor was failing. The Eastern Palace, too, was filled with our pawns. Once indulged, they now served their purpose. The more intelligence they relayed to their masters, the greater their value. That night, the fifth prince rebelled, leading his troops to storm the imperial city. He breached the gates and advanced like a whirlwind. Yet the moment he entered the palace lanes, the city's 4 gates slammed shut. Countless imperial guards lined the walls, unleashing a hail of arrows, killing without mercy. The crown prince took my hand, saying nothing, yet I saw the turmoil in his eyes. His gaze held ambition and delight, the satisfaction of vanquishing rivals and nearing his grand ambition. His position as heir apparent was now secure. The other princes were too young and inexperienced to challenge him. He had played the dutiful son to perfection before His Majesty. The moment His Majesty heard of the fifth prince's rebellion, he vomited blood and collapsed unconscious. The crown prince remained by His Majesty's bedside, personally administering medicine until the emperor drew his final breath. He ascended the throne in accordance with the imperial will. I too entered the inner palace, becoming Empress. While my daughter was granted the title Princess Minghua, he declared he would heed his minister's counsel and hold a grand selection of consorts. I felt no jealousy. Instead, responding magnanimously, His Majesty does indeed require attendance. Expanding the harem to bear children is only proper. Finding no fault in me, he was somewhat taken aback. He selected beauties, appointing 4 consorts, and above them, 1 noble consort. That noble consort was none other than an old acquaintance, the very woman I had glimpsed behind the rockery that day. Yu Hanyan, daughter of a censor, possessed a background unworthy of the imperial consort title. Yet the emperor favored her, and thus her elevation followed his will. After receiving her title, she came to pay her respects, appearing as delicate as a willow swaying in the breeze. But when alone, her words cut like a dagger. For years, the world had spoken of the deep affection between His Majesty and the Empress. Yet, on that day, the emperor remarked that his consort's scheming and cunning surpassed even that of men. On the path to becoming sovereign, she had personally stained her hands with bloodshed. Such hardness of heart made even his own bedmate send a chill down his spine. Her eyes flickered with defiance. Most women would be hurt to hear such words from the husband they had personally elevated. But not me. His words cannot wound me in the slightest. If he knew my true intentions, he would feel far more than mere dread. Yu Hanyan spoke thus, part provocation, part sowing discord. Yet I finished my tea without flinching. Her disappointment froze the curve of her lips. After she left, I made no effort to confront the emperor. It was as if I had never heard those words. Now that the empire was secured, the emperor felt no restraint. After that, he spent entire nights in the consort's palace, caressing her cheek and ear, even exempting her from court greetings, publicly snubbing my dignity. He undertook grand construction projects for her, building the star-gathering tower, drinking and reveling with her. The world assumed I, the neglected original wife, must surely harbor resentment. But how could I resent him? I only wished he would go even further. The more outrageous and tyrannical he became, the more that supreme power would gradually shift into my hands. Immersed in the tender embrace of his beauty, he grew lax in his governance. The memorials he refused to handle were all sent to the Phoenix Grace Palace. At first, he merely intended to test the waters. Yet the memorials processed through my hands not only contained not a single error but were praised by the ministers, extolling his wisdom. Born into a distinguished family, I once aided Liang Xien in ascending to the position of chancellor and later helped the third prince seize the throne. The art of imperial governance. I am no stranger to it. If given this position, I would perform better than him. The harem grew ever more crowded with beauties. The soft embrace of women most easily erodes a hero's resolve. He always seemed weary and listless, increasingly unwilling to handle affairs. Consort He was with child. She had always been frail. Conceiving a child was no easy feat. He cherished this child deeply and made her a solemn promise. Consort He had once been arrogant in my presence, repeating his exact words. The Empress had only one daughter. If the consort gave birth to a son, he would be crowned crown prince. This was the emperor's private promise to her. She desperately wanted to see panic in my eyes, but I merely smiled and congratulated her. Her Majesty the Empress now feigned composure, though inwardly she likely seethed with hatred toward me. Now, years later, I needn't fear telling you, His Majesty and I shared mutual affection long ago. He married you only for the sake of the throne. Her hand rested on her belly, her face radiant with smiles. If you could take my place now, would you need to waste words on me? My eyes narrowed slightly, catching her momentary flicker of distress. This remark had struck her deepest wound. A mere clown, nothing more. After that, she seldom visited Lingy Palace. She finally understood the futility of sparring with me in words. Each time she provoked or taunted me, she received only my indifference. Yuhanyan did indeed bear a prince, the emperor's first son. Yet her years of frail health led to life-threatening hemorrhaging during childbirth. The imperial physicians fought desperately to save her, but her body was too depleted. She did not survive the month. The emperor was overcome with grief, suspending court for many days. He sat despondently in her chambers each day, clutching her old garments, the palace doors tightly shut, refusing to see anyone. Even ministers with urgent state affairs could only come to me for guidance. He issued an edict naming her infant son as crown prince, a mere babe in swaddling clothes, hastily elevated to the position. Yet the imperial physicians warned that Yuhanyan's difficult labor had left the crown prince frail from birth. They feared he might not survive past 10 years. These words they dared not utter to His Majesty. Since the physicians held their tongues, His Majesty need not know. Let him believe his crown prince is a child of robust health. He would not listen to his minister's counsel. He insisted on posthumously honoring her as Empress. What he couldn't give her in life, he now insisted on bestowing posthumously. The harem buzzed with whispers. Yet I did not oppose him. Instead, I helped quell the rumors. Recognizing my measured approach to affairs, he entrusted me with increasingly important matters. He remained utterly consumed by grief over the imperial consort's passing, drinking incessantly without restraint until he was often dead drunk. with many duties and little sustenance. His appetite dwindled significantly. Before long, he developed a headache. At first, it was a mild ache, but it soon became excruciating. The imperial physician examined him and merely stated it was wind cold entering his body, requiring careful recuperation. I noticed the physician's hesitant expression, but did not press him. Instead, I summoned him privately. Doctor Who, His Majesty dislikes discussing his ailments. If you face any difficulties, you may confide in me privately. Do not provoke His Majesty's irritation or anger. Doctor Who visibly relaxed at these words. He explained that the condition could be minor or severe. With careful recuperation, it might remain a minor ailment. But if His Majesty continued to indulge himself and neglect his health, it could develop into a serious headache. Wind ailments are stubborn and incurable. The ancient divine physicians spoke of trepanation, but no one dares attempt it. His Majesty detests being restrained. How could he possibly rest properly? As the understanding and virtuous consort in his eyes, I naturally must comply with his wishes. Whether he revels night after night or pines for her through mementos, I will never go against his will. When the imperial physician prescribed the life-sustaining wind-dispelling decoction, he refused to drink it, and I let him be. He became obsessed with the alchemy of golden elixirs, seeking out every sorcerer to persuade him to consume them, claiming he could see the late Empress Consort's image in his dreams. I never stopped him. In just a year, his symptoms worsened, manifesting as numbness and weakness in his limbs, and blurred vision. He gradually lost the strength to attend to court affairs. Even slightly longer periods reviewing memorials caused dizziness, blurred vision, and paralysis in his right hand, rendering him unable to hold a brush. Only when he lifted his teacup and found his hand trembling uncontrollably did he grasp the gravity of his condition. But by then, it was too late. The herbal remedies prescribed by the imperial physicians held little effect on him. He could barely manage to attend court each day. And after the court session, he had no energy left to handle state affairs. All of this, he could only entrust to me. Besides me, he had no one he could trust. His brothers were the ones he distrusted most. His children were still too young. I, however, was his wife since before the wedding, having walked beside him through the bloody storms of power struggles. Together we had faced open and hidden threats, shared sleepless nights pondering the path ahead. He could trust only me. He feared the imperial authority slipping from his grasp, and dreaded powerful ministers rising above it. Now, I alone can stabilize the court and intimidate the aristocratic clans for him. During his convalescence, all matters great and small in the court were decided by me. Power is what I pursue, and it was my purpose in marrying him. He believes himself the victor, having used me and the Fu family to ascend the throne. Little does he know, he is merely a stepping stone on my path to the imperial throne. Rather than prop up his lofty ambitions, I would seize the throne myself. In the depths of winter, as snow swirled outside, I ordered servants to quietly open the windows in the dead of night, knowing his frail body dreaded the cold. This finally broke him. As he lay dying, his lips still murmured the name, Han Yen. In a final moment of lucidity, he commanded the throne be passed to the crown prince. The young emperor ascended the throne, and I became Empress Dowager, ruling from behind the curtain. After years of striving, I had finally reached this position. Yet, it was still not enough. The new emperor was still a child, frail and weak. Seated in the court, he dared not speak. Whenever ministers presented petitions, his gaze would turn to me. He was utterly incapable of handling such occasions. The imperial physician took his pulse daily, his eyes growing heavier with worry each day. Privately, he told me the new emperor might not live beyond 5 years. 5 years, enough time for me to plan. He is my puppet. As long as he remains, the legitimacy and stability of the realm endure. I will use these 5 years to seize absolute control over the entire dynasty. Then, even when he is gone, the empire shall not fall into chaos. To this end, I have promoted scholars from humble backgrounds, selecting talent without regard to lineage, shattering the entrenched dominance of the aristocratic clans. The old and new factions now check each other, while imperial relatives have been exiled to remote frontiers. I established the Mirror Bureau to oversee all officials, encouraging mutual denunciation. I have made all necessary preparations. My daughter once asked me, "Mother, if I were a son, could I have eased your burdens?" The palace attendants whisper behind my back that father never favored me. When I was born, he had hoped for a son. My arrival disappointed him. Because of this, he neglected you. Passed the crown prince title and the throne to Consort Yu's son, posthumously honored her as Empress, and reduced you to a laughingstock throughout the court and the realm. I stroked her cheek and smiled, but I wanted a daughter like Minghua. You will be my lifelong pride. I invited the greatest scholars of our age to teach her learning, asked the grand tutor to instruct her in the ways of ruling, and I myself would personally teach her the art of imperial governance. My expectations for her have always been different from those of others. Her gaze fixed on me with unwavering resolve. Mother, I will surpass those men. Mother believes in you. At these words, a radiant smile blossomed across her face. When the young emperor passed away, he was only 9 years old. I ascended the throne with an iron fist. Without legitimate claim, the path ahead demanded mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Such is the nature of imperial power and conquest. I am no saint, and I will not retreat now. In the eyes of the world, I could have adopted an heir from the imperial clan, ruled from behind the curtain, and still held the reins of power as the true ruler. But I refuse. I insist on sitting proudly and rightfully upon the imperial throne. 100 years hence, when historians meticulously record our era, my name shall stand alongside those of emperors throughout the ages. I wish posterity to remember me as the Empress, not as the crown prince's consort, the Empress, or the dowager Empress. On the day of my coronation, Minghua gazed up at the 12-tiered crown upon my head and murmured softly, "Mother looks truly majestic wearing it. One day, it will rest upon Minghua's own head." I longed for a daughter that day, knowing she would inherit everything I possess. The path of an empress is never a legacy confined to a single generation, nor will I allow it to end with mine. Though heaven and earth may shift, and the cosmos turn upside down, I still encounter old acquaintances. Everyone said Liang Xien had gone mad. Ragged and tattered, he climbed the city wall and stood there, shouting, "I held the office of chancellor," wielding power that shook the world. The late emperor entrusted me with his young heir, bestowing upon me a weighty responsibility. I supported the infant emperor, my achievements overshadowing the heavens, my name to be remembered for all eternity. His voice was cold, stern, and resolute, echoing from the summit of the city wall. Below, crowds gathered, pointing and whispering. He spotted me, then offered a sorrowful smile and spoke a single phrase. He said, "I remember." He recalled everything from his past life. Then, from the city wall's peak, he leapt. As he fell, his face bore a look of release, as if he had truly found liberation. The people below watched his body fall. Those who knew him sighed, murmuring, "The pride of heaven in his first half-life, reduced to the streets in his second." The crushing disparity and blow must have driven him mad. But his memories held far more than that. The high office and power of his past life seemed like a fleeting dream. The more one possessed in dreams, the more despairing reality became. In the past life, he was the one wielding power over the realm, supporting the young emperor. In this life, I am the one reigning supreme, holding absolute authority. The year Minghua came of age, she entered the Eastern Palace. Already possessing the dignified bearing of a crown prince, she declared with unwavering resolve, I will help Mother safeguard this legacy, ensuring its prosperity for all eternity. The end.